perceive this, the benefit, as a quality of life. It's 20 weeks and then, surgery and then maybe radiation. So I'm gonna go see my doctor this week and I'm gonna talk to him about options, and perhaps maybe just the surgery and the radiation will be options. But if I don't see a perceived benefit, no matter how many people talk to me, my mother talked to me this morning, my work mother talked to me this morning, some friends, some colleagues, if I don't perceive a benefit to the chemo, I'm not going to change my mind. And you are not going to change your client's mind. You're not going to change their values, and you're not going to change their tendency. The true values. People have inauthentic values and they don't know it. It's the stuff that's in the bad bucket, it's their shadows. That's not what I'm talking about. But if I don't see a perceived benefit, and you don't bring a perceived benefit to your client or help them see it, they're not going to change behavior. Perceived risk. You're constantly measuring. This medication that they put in me, that has me on a bed for 5 or 6 days straight, nauseous, vomiting, with joint pain, with back pain, with headaches, with dizziness, not able to eat, the smells annoy me, sounds hurt me who doesn't shut up, hasn't said a word in days. This isn't a quality of life to me. So right now, the benefits are way less than the risks. I just don't think that the benefit of this treatment for me personally at this moment, now I haven't gotten all the information, and this is very important, that why we recommend reading materials or YouTube videos or books or different articles to clients is because we want to give them information. So today one of my colleagues is like, oh, have you researched it? And then another colleague was like, oh, why don't you talk to a family member of mine who had the same issue? So there's still places for me to go before I evaluate and make 100% my decision of no. I'm thinking about it right now. Like I said, the risks way outweigh the benefits. But I still have some information. And so it helps us as therapists to give clients additional materials so that they can perhaps expand their worldview of things that they didn't know. I remember my therapist once showed me a video. I think it was The Fox and the Hedgehog. Have you ever seen that?
No.
It was like, I think that's what it was called. The fox has one way of looking at things. I think it's more like global, and then so much that I remembered, right? The hedgehog is more linear and logic, and she was using this in a couples session. How couples are oftentimes like that, the fox and the hedgehog. So watching a video, and other times she had given us some other videos to watch, TED Talks and things like that. And so it's something that we did as couples together, and then it would, start an elaborate conversation. So we want to give people options and things that they may not have been exposed to. I think that's one of the things that students love so much about our classes, is that we're exposing them to things that they would not even know, and especially in traditional, psych programs. So we want to give information so that they can perhaps at least level the playing field. And so today, I got 2 recommendations. Look up some articles, which I will, I guess I'm a little bit of an applied scientist at heart, so I'll look up some research. And I will speak to this person's family member who turned out to be in a support group, and that support group might be something that I can, use. Because at the end of the day, my friends and my family don't know what chemo is. They don't physically understand what this is. So it's very easy for someone, and we have to remember this as a therapist, it's very easy for us to assume that we know what the client is going through. Pain is pain. Yes, and my pain isn't more painful than yours. You're feeling yours and I'm feeling mine. But the actual experience, and I remember it was probably my first class in my doctorate program, that the teacher said, clients will ask you specifically, and I don't know if this happened to you, have you had in addiction specifically? Have you been an addict? Are you an addict? Are you in recovery?
Has this ever happened
Happened
to you? Because they want to relate.
Yes, they want to make sure that you know how to relate. And because unless you're experiencing, you really don't know. And we have to keep that in mind. It's like walk a mile in someone else's shoes. Like, pain is pain. You're going through something, I'm going through something. That doesn't mean that mine is bigger than, there's no rating scale that, chemo is more, than a headache or something like that.
It's all about perception.
It's all perception. And so we have to keep that in mind, whether the person is in a worse situation than you, because that's a judgment. You're judging it. I would never put myself in that situation. And we don't know that. We don't know that. And usually, I've said to this before, it's what you think you never do that ends up being your dark night of the soul that, really knocks you down. So let's not judge. But I remember that teacher saying that, especially in addictions, but clients in general will ask you, have you gone through this? Do you know what I'm going through? Because we want to feel related to, we want to feel relatable. I remember talking to my therapist about something with my ex-husband, and she's like, oh, I get it now. And at that moment, I felt so validated. I was like, finally, someone understands. Because you just feel like an outcast, or you feel like you're weird, or you feel like you're different, because your situation is different.
Can it also be used as a justification for not listening? Like if you the therapist tells you, no, I've never been through that, well then who are you to talk to me?
Exactly, yes.
So then there's nothing wrong with me then.
Right.
How can you tell me?
You could never understand.
Yes.
Yes, that's a really good point. Psychology Today, when you're Googling for therapists, they put the specialty areas. And people will look, for different specialty areas. Like for instance, I have now on my website the trans experience. So I offer that as that service because I have a lived experience. It might be different than a client's lived experience, but there's now some common ground.
Well, speaking of values, there are people who specifically want a Christian-based.
Yes, and there are pastoral counselors and there's guidance counselors that just want, like not in the schools, like people pay thousands of dollars to get college advisement or work counseling. That's what I love about astrology, is that all of that's in the wheel, and when we get to that, you're gonna love it because you can just see in 2 seconds, oh my God, that's the answer. So it's very cool. So giving information to clients is extremely important. Identify the severity and the barriers. So there's this article that I will share with you guys. Mr. Pachi will put it on Blackboard. But this is the example that this article gives about. So this is called Social and Behavioral Theories and Why Theories Are Important. So, I love theories. I love writing my own theories, but I want you guys to get into the habit, especially for those of you who are going into master's and doctoral programs. You must pick a theory and you write your research based on that. That is why I stress this so much, okay? So in the health belief model, this is the example that they use. So there are 6 constructs. Does everyone remember that word? Constructs, that I said every model has constructs and a language. Yes? Do I hear yes?
Yes.
Okay. So constructs and common language. In this particular model, so this is the language of this model. You guys know my language. And for the health belief model, the words are perceived severity, perceived susceptibility, perceived benefits, perceived barriers, cues to action, and self-efficacy. So this is, in this article, the way that they explain this particular health belief model. My brother just had heart surgery. This is a cue to action. This would be like pre-contemplation going into contemplation. Oh my God, wait a minute. What is the level playing field? What is the commonality? We're both men. We're both CEOs. We're both in our 50s. Something triggers that the person says, oh wow. That is why we want to normalize behavior. One of the things I've told you that I've said to clients before is, oh, I have so many clients like that. Or, oh, me too. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh, but according to this model, it can also jump them into behavior change because now they're saying, oh, it happened to you, it can happen to me. I'm 45, not one risk factor, not one risk factor. I don't have a genetic link to breast cancer, and I have not one risk factor, yet I got it twice. So this means that even if you don't have the BRCA gene, and even if you never took hormones, and even if you got, children before 30, you could still get this. I am living proof. So now someone might have a cue to action, oh shit, I have to watch out. A stroke can be really serious. You can lose movement on one side of your body and have difficulty keeping balance for months afterwards. Perceived severity. So this is information that we want to give the client or have them research stuff so that they understand how severe something is. Because if it's not in their framework, if it's not in their universal sort of worldview, they just may not know. There's not much I can do to prevent a heart attack. If it's going to happen, then it will happen no matter what I do. This is self-efficacy. This is important. I mentioned it before. The belief that I have any control, or it's from the external. And what I said earlier is, do I even deserve to have health? Okay, that's one of the ways that I like to see it. Does that person even believe that they deserve to have health? Forget for a moment whether or not they have any control over it. And then, is it something from the external? So this is self-efficacy, obviously an external cue. If I follow my exercise schedule, I will reduce my risk for a heart attack and I will also have more energy. This is the benefit. I am in great health, so I don't have to worry about having a heart attack. Perceived susceptibility. This is super important. It won't happen to me. It won't happen to me syndrome. Oh, that'll never happen to me. Oh, me get divorced. Oh, me get cancer. Oh, me this. Oh, me get fired. Oh, me ever be bankrupt. Oh, me, oh, me, oh, me. That will never happen to me syndrome. When you hear that, that is susceptibility. And based on astrological, metaphysical principles, that's where you're going to get sucker punched. That's where you're going to get blindsided. So when someone says to you, oh, that'll never happen to me, bring them to that awareness, because that is an area of major susceptibility. My doctor asked me to go in for some lab work, but the past couple of months have just been crazy. It can wait. Perceived barriers. We love to put barriers. What are the barriers for me now? I'm nauseous. I want to vomit. I can't eat. I can't smell. I keep burping. I'm in so much pain. My bones and my articulations and my joints hurt. I'm bruised like crazy. Who wants to, be sick on a couch for 6 days in a row? I have so many perceived barriers, so many, that it's going to be a little difficult because I'm stubborn. And my wife keeps reminding me to go see my doctor, another cue to action. So this is the language of this particular model. This is a big, big, big piece here. Does your client believe that they deserve what they're asking the universe or you or the world or their boss or their husband to give them? Okay, that's my language. And do they have any control over it, or is it external? In my model, there's a lot of control, because I'm a control freak. And it's not so much that there's a lot of control because it's very subconscious, but there's a lot of control in the sense that we're going back to origin story. So with awareness, we can decide, or we can say, you know what? Maybe that isn't such a place that I have such a big problem. So I can let it go. Letting things go is a form of control. That's surrender. And again, remember information. In this model, they believe that information, although I read this really great quote the other day that said, we have so much information, but so little wisdom. And I thought that was really great. But side note. But in this particular model, giving information. So part of our job is information. So that's why it's important to keep up with the literature, to see what's out there, or if a client talks to you about something and you're not aware, you better get well read on it. Because if not, you're going to lose that person. Okay, any questions on health belief model? Did you see who wrote?
It doesn't say.
Okay, I can remember. Okay, now, my model, the mother, father, child triad. So, of course, it's my model, so I love my model, and I believe in my model, although I've said that every single model has loopholes, and every single model will inevitably not work on someone, okay? And it might just be because they don't want to change. It has nothing to do with perhaps the constructs in the model. But the mother, father, child triad is actually based on a metaphysical law, and why it's so solid. It's called the law of octaves. So I'm going to simplify the law of octaves for you in a really, really condensed, easy to understand, miniature form. Gurdjieff, who I've mentioned many times, writes books.
The health belief model was developed in the 50s by social psychologists Hochbaum, Rosenstock, and Kegels.
Oh, God. Okay.
With
that.
U.S. Public Health Service.
Okay. And there's a bunch. There's social learning theories, and, you know, there's
Social
so many.
cognitive.
Social cognitive, exactly. There's a bunch of needs. So, you know, a big construct in my model is the needs. A lot of these are needs. I specifically talk about unmet needs. So if you're interested in public health change, behavior change, specifically models, there are a gazillion books. And for those of you who perhaps are thinking about studying a master's but don't want to get it in psych, public health is a wonderful combination with the bachelor's in psychology, okay? So master's in public health, A++, or a doctorate in public health. What you do is, public health is about the more global or larger population. So for instance, I'm a dietitian, and I will talk to one person and help that one person lose weight. Whereas I'm a public health dietitian, and I'm talking about writing standards for global or larger populations, you know, children that are aged 4 to 6 or something, okay? So these two go really hand in hand, which is nice, and you can see that. So Gurdjieff talks and writes a lot about the law of octaves. And if you Google it, you're gonna read it, and you're gonna be like, your head is gonna spin. And I love metaphysical law. I believe in metaphysical law. So let me first define what metaphysical law is. I told you many, many months ago to download a free book called The Kybalion. And it's a very old and skinny book. And it has some of the most important metaphysical laws. So for someone like me, one of the reasons I really like metaphysical law is because these are laws that are constant. No matter what the circumstance, they don't change. And of course, we've talked already that I'm a Pisces, so of course, Pisces like to be in the cosmos. We don't like to be here grounded on Earth. We don't like earthly law, but we have to learn to abide by it. And that's one of the big constructs of my model, is so that I myself can learn to abide by earthly laws. But anyway, metaphysical law is constant. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are, is believe that these laws exist in the universe and explain the cosmos. Whereas physical laws are more to deal with the earth. So for instance, we know gravity exists on Earth, but gravity does not exist in other areas. Okay, so that is a physical law. Another form of physical law, so that's a non-constant, okay? It's not the same everywhere. The other thing about physical or earthly laws is that it's like if you kill a man. If you kill a man, you can get off scot-free if you have the right jury, right? O.J. Simpson. If you kill a man, you can get life. And if you kill a man, you can get the death penalty. And of course, a gazillion other options. But let's just say those are 3. Same crime, minimum of 3 options of what the law is. Someone like me doesn't like that. I like knowing, it's part of my control freakness. I like knowing what's coming. I like knowing the laws. So you might run over a cat and you're driving through Rhode Island and there's a law in the books where killing cats is illegal and you end up in jail. You didn't know the law. That is something that's similar between physical and metaphysical laws. Not knowing the law does not keep you free from getting penalized for the law, by the law, okay? So you still need to become aware. That's one of the reasons I want to teach you about the law of octaves. So the Kybalion, very skinny, free book, has most of the laws that I've written my model on. And one of the reasons why the mother, father, child triad is written in 3 and 4, which is child and adult, in the first 3 steps. Anyone remember? Person, place, thing, situation is mother, father. Second, what don't I like? That's the mirror. And what need does this fulfill? That's the first 3 steps. Those are the child. Then we have the teenager, which is just the awareness that there is an issue. And then the adult, which is define the need. That you wrote here. So the need that you found, you have to define it. And you have to define it smart. Okay, so it's very specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. This is why it's the adult. Because the adult means you have to hold yourself accountable. And this is super important when it comes to the law of octaves. Accountability. Adults hold themselves accountable. Children do not. Okay? Once you define the need, how can you meet need for yourself? The rule book, right? A rule about your need, and if you're into it, a ceremony or ritual. And these are adult steps because they're specific about accountability. And in all of these models, in order for behavior change to actually stick, the person has to hold themselves accountable. And one of the key constructs in my model is that you are responsible or you created everything. That's one of the key constructs. So it makes sense that you're going to change and you're going to remain, hashtag do it differently, if you indeed do the adult steps. If you do child and teenager, you will get something, but you will not have consistent change around and around and around. You will not sort of instill new values or have the long-term behavior change that you want. So, what is the law of octaves? The law of octaves explains behavior change in a metaphysical form. And so I've taken everything that I've ever read that has like spun my head around, and I found a very concise way to explain it. The law of octaves talks about the musical scale. The musical scale is phenomenal. And I'm not a musician. Your
No.
family. But
My
your
family is, yes.
musical. Okay, so people who know, the scales understand, and if you look at a piano, which is the closest that I've ever gotten to being musical, because that's what I played as a little girl forced, you go what? C, D, E, F, G, C, D? Is it like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh.
Then it goes up the next octave, and then it goes the next octave, and you see the piano, and I'm assuming that that's how it's with the clarinet, and that's how it is with the trumpet, I don't know, but this scale goes up, 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 up. And so I learned in Spanish, so do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do.
Oh, it's
And you start again, and then it goes. So this is an octave, and this is an octave. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then this goes higher, right? So this is the lower tones. I don't know what these words are. My old piano teacher would kill me, but sorry, Irene, don't remember. But this octave is lower than this octave, and this one gets higher and higher and higher and higher, and that's how we have the musical scales. This entire law is based on the law of octaves, on the musical scale. So, how is this explained? You have do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. Okay, do is your next level, your next highest level, okay? At mi, do, re, mi, 3, there's like a shock. And I remember when I was younger, I would go on a diet. I was always on a diet. And the third day, something would happen. Third day, I would get a craving, I would cheat. Third day, I would hurt my ankle, I couldn't run anymore. On the third day, it was always this thing with the third day. And I was like, what the hell? And so I learned to extrapolate that piece of information for this. Do, re, mi, that is 3. That's the triangle. Do, re, mi. Fa, sol, la, ti. And then it would start again. Okay, so it would just recycle. The law of octave says that you first get the desire, let's say, to change. So perhaps contemplation, perhaps preparation or action. Okay? With do, re, mi, with the musical scale. So once you've put some things into place, you get like this shock. It's like a metaphysical sort of shock wave through your body. And you, okay, so you've gained awareness. That's all you have at that moment. And I wish that I had a musician that could explain this in other ways, but this is how I've understood it, so I hope that tell me if I explain it okay.
Okay.
Then, what happens here is you have the 4. The 4 is the square. I've told you a little bit about numerology before. 3 is the number of change. In the tarot, we have the Empress. It's one of the best cards. Is a 3 card. These particular deck that I show you has numerology and astrology on it. And so any card that is a 3 is going to be change. So the Hangman is one of the major cards in the deck. You have an exchange of values. You see the little coins. This is the symbol of the earth. The earth is always 4, whether it's encompassed in a circle or whether it's like mine that I put just a box. And 1 plus 2 is 3. That's how we got the numerology. But this is the Empress. And the Empress is a 3 card, but she's sitting on a cube. She happens to have the 12 signs in the zodiac above her. But this is a 3 card. Change. 4 cards are earth cards. They have to do with hard work. Okay? Now notice that she is facing the left, the future. He's facing the right, the past. You have to look back in order to go forward. That's harder work. And this happens to be, just so you know, this symbol happens to be a symbol of Aquarius, which is change, transformation. So unless we have a 4, per se, in our life, something that represents Earth, I want to say it's Japanese, but it could be Chinese. I'm not exactly sure which philosophy. The number 4 is the number of death. So this must have been several years ago. I had a client whose son had died, and the brother of that guy that died had a girlfriend, and she came for a session. And she had very strong intuition, and she says that the day that her brother-in-law, who would be her brother-in-law, died, she kept hearing 4, 4, 4. And like the number 4 kept appearing and appearing. And she's like, oh my God, I have to go outside and take a walk. Like she was almost suffocated with that. And the reason that the number 4 represents death, and that was the day that the guy died. And no one expected it. They're not sure if it was an overdose, if it was accidental. There's a lot of inconclusive things around his death, but she kept getting this message. The reason why 4 is death is because it represents this plane, the earthly plane. If you guys remember, I told you about the Trimurti. This is Vishnu, part of the Trimurti. I told you it was Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, Mother, Father, Child, Triad. This is the Trinity. This has to do with the more cosmos or the other planes in the universe. So you have to have some sort of a belief, so to speak. Whereas the number 4 has to do with the earthly plane, which is the one